Hello and welcome. Today I am in the Tier 8 American aircraft carrier, the Saipan. You might be wondering, why is there a work in progress tag? Well, that's because Wargaming asked us to have this, and to be honest, it kinda feels that way on these Tier 8 CVs because they they don't quite feel appropriate in all kinds of games. Anyway, so the Saipan's special thing is the fact that she has tier 10 planes. That is, you're dealing with the same types of planes that the Midway uses, except you have, for example, you have fewer planes per attack or something along those lines. For rocket planes, you're not dealing with the HVARs, you're dealing with tiny TIMs. So these actually have more penetration power with rockets that set fires than the HE dive bombers actually. However, as you can see, the drop pattern can be quite large if you don't wait until it converges. Now, because she uses tier 10 planes and oh my god, why? How does this happen? How are battleships so slow to move out? Oh well, whatever, I suppose. I guess I'm just side armor to this Iowa. So, you might think that because the Saipan has tier 10 plane, she is actually the best tier 8 CV to get up tiered in, but I would actually argue that it's the opposite, because the Saipan has almost double the time to recharge planes, so that once you lose planes, it takes time to get some new ones, and the Saipan is almost double on that. Yes, the planes survive for longer, however, sometimes you run into things like fighters from a ship, float fighters. Those are rather common. And then there are other situations where you're suddenly surprised by like a Minotaur or a Worcester or something like that that basically deletes your entire squadron very quickly. And if you are in a Saipan, that is very, very bad for you. So I would actually argue that the Saipan's strength lies in being down tier, that is when you are top tier, or mostly are fighting ships that are lower tier than yourself because you're going to lose less planes. And honestly, as a CV, it's very easy to get deplaned as a tier 8 CV, that is. Well, even tier 8 matches themselves, you have to pay attention to how you use the planes. And honestly, what I've found is that pretty much regardless of the tier 8 premium CV or tier 8 CV you're using in general, you can pretty much only ever do 2 attacks, except on DDs. On DDs you can just annoy them however long you want because they usually don't have enough anti-air to shoot all the things down. But what I found is that in most cases, you can pretty much only do 2 attacks, because if you go for a third one, you will probably lose a lot of your planes, and that's just bad news, right? You don't want that. So you want to capitalize on that, and that's actually the reason why I think tier 8 CV, the Saipan isn't that great when up tiered, because if you're only going for 2 attacks anyway, then it doesn't matter if your squadron has 12 planes or 15 planes or something like that, because if you're using 2 planes per attack, you're only going to use 4 planes to attack in a squadron. Everything else is just a risk that can get shot down. Meaning that if you run out of planes on, like, let's say, I don't know, an Enterprise, you're only waiting to recharge like 6 planes, because I think Enterprise drops 3 planes per. You're only waiting to recharge 6 planes. In the Saipan's case, you would only wait to recharge 4 planes. However, because Enterprise is almost has a recharge time that's almost twice as fast, you'll recharge them quicker, and that means you're less likely to be in a situation where you don't have enough planes to do your two attacks. I don't know, that might sound way more complicated than it actually is. But yeah, the basic idea is that recharging planes quickly is useful, and that's also something I did with my commander skills, and they're basically the same as they were on the other CVs I've been using. You go for maximum number of plane recharges because that's the most important thing, because if you don't have planes you can't deal any damage. So how do I think the Saipan matches up against other CVs? Well, I think the Saipan is, compared to tier 8 CVs, she feels really good when you are the top tier. When you are the bottom tier, she doesn't feel quite as great, but she's still fine. You can still deal some damage. However, I feel that tier 8 CVs in general aren't very good unless you get a specific situation that seems to favor you. We're talking like the enemy ships aren't bunching up like in this game, right? If you look at the minimap, the enemy team is spread out across the map. There's a Fletcher on one side, there's a Moss in the middle, there's a Lightning in the middle, there's a Monarch, a Colorado, a Leon. You know, ships are fairly spread out, meaning that it's possible to drop into them. But if ships are all in one big clump, Saipan is not a ship you want to be in. And honestly, you don't want to be in that match in any CV really. But tier 8 premium CVs seem to, well, or tier 8 CVs seem to be much worse than tier 10 CVs in the same situation, even if you're dealing with you know, if you're dealing with tier appropriate ships. So you're not in a tier 10 game as a tier 8 CV, but you're in a tier 8 game as a tier 8 CV. I mean, in this match, this is tier appropriate, right? You could even call it down tiered, and that's why I can do the things I'm doing. But look, I mean, it's a Monarch and a Leon, and even here I can only really do two drops. If I go for a third one, I'm gonna lose the torpedo bombers, and this is something you have to take into account. That's why I had to pull back. So now I'm gonna launch rocket planes. Actually, it doesn't matter if you launch rockets or dive bombers. I guess they're not quite the same, but they're very similar. The rockets can penetrate basically the same type of armor as the dive bombers can, except the dive bombers deal slightly more damage, I believe. But I want to go and find the Moss, and that's why I launched the rockets. Although, to be fair, as you've seen, the rockets don't seem to be very effective against DDs, because you just don't fire too many of them. Which I actually think is fine. I think it's good that that all the CVs aren't basically outright ruining the game for DDs. And I mean, so far I've done already 114,000 damage, although quite a lot of it is with flooding. And since the DD is hidden, I don't think I can do another drop, so I'll just go find the battleship to drop one with rocket planes. One advantage the tier 10 planes bring the Saipan that is quite nice is the fact that the planes are obviously faster because, well, they're tier 10, right, compared to tier 8s. But actually the Graf Zeppelin is even better at it. For some reason she gets really fast planes, and I'll put a video up about her, maybe not tomorrow, but the day after that, or something along those lines. And I mean, that's kinda it, what I think about it. I still feel that tier 8 CVs, they're not the greatest, but we'll see what happens with the future patches and whatnot. By the way, this is after the anti-air was nerfed and all that, and it's still quite dangerous for CVs. But I mean, if I can do 10k damage with HE dive bombers, maybe it's appropriate, or at least a little bit appropriate. Although, I'll be honest, I think HE dive bombers should not deal so much damage, because honestly, it feels like the HE dive bombers deal just as much damage as the AP dive bombers, except they don't need to citadel their targets. And that feels kinda, you know, it feels unfair, to be honest. Or rather, AP dive bombers don't feel good enough. Okay, so match-wise. Well, the enemy team has lost 4 ships, we have lost 2 ships, so we are definitely ahead. But this is definitely not something that has been decided yet. I'm gonna go try and finish off the Monarch. I'll try to avoid some flak here. One thing I learned that you can avoid flak rather well is using the W and S keys. If you go back and if you speed up and slow down, flak shoots at like a certain type of ratio, right? Or at certain timings. You know, they'll fire a flak cloud, then there's a lull, and then they fire a flak cloud again. Wait, did I just not get the kill? Wow, that's unfortunate. So the way flak works is that it fires flak, then there's a little lull in action, then it fires flak again, then there's another lull. And if you slow down for a bit, then speed up again, then slow down again, then speed up again, then slow down again. If you do that, it's possible to basically fly in a straight line more or less and dodge flak decently. At least that's what I've found. And that's very useful, especially since you want to fly in a straight line with these torpedo bombers and whatnot. Although they won't save you from float fighters, which are quite annoying at this point in the game. Man, these torpedoes, these are doing more for me than I expected. But I mean, this game's pretty much over now. I really don't see what they could even potentially do. Although it would really be nice if some of the battleships next to me would stay, you know, closer to the enemy ships than I am. You know, it would be nice if they didn't hide behind the Saipan. Especially since the Saipan, well, she was a lower tier CV, meaning that she doesn't quite have the same armor, I guess? I don't actually know. Does the Saipan have the same armor or comparable to like Lexington? Well, she definitely has less HP, I guess. Well, the game's over anyway, there's 990 points, so... I complained a little bit in chat, but honestly, there was no point because apparently the game already ended. Isn't that nice? Anyway, this is basically what the Saipan is like. If you have a good game like this one, like as you can see, I mostly fought ships that were lower tier than I was. If I get up tier, I can often do very little. I have had games where I did like 40,000 damage, for example. Well, I didn't quite get number 1, but the Kronstadt got number 1. This was actually a tier 9 game, it's just that I didn't end up fighting tier 9 ships. And I mean, a lot of my damage was from flooding, which apparently is being changed, so we'll see how that works out. But I mean, even without that, I would still have 120k-ish damage at least, so that's still a decent game. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I would like to thank the Patreons on Patreon. Thank you very much for your continued support, ActiveOut2, and I hope I'll see you guys next time.